My daughter said I embarrassed her, so I sold her apartment. What I left changed everything. Tom's heart raced as he shuffled through the dimly lit living room, memories swirling like autumn leaves as he gathered Sarah's belongings. Every photograph he touched pulsed with laughter, birthing echoes of family barbecues and birthday parties that used to fill their cozy home with joy. Yet here he was, the unintentional villain in his daughter's life story. A gut-wrenching twist had crushed the remnants of their bond, a bond he thought was unbreakable. He had overheard her today, burying her pain deep within the folds of a phone call. "He just doesn't get it," Sarah had said, her voice thick with frustration. "Every time he shows up in that stupid army jacket or tells one of his old stories, I want to crawl under a rock. It's like he's trying to embarrass me on purpose." Hearing those words struck him like a gut punch. How could she feel this way? He was trying to connect, to guide her, to be the father she needed. Instead, he had become the punchline. Driven by a whirlwind of emotions, Tom felt his pride swell. Stripping Sarah of what she perceived as comfort would force her to grow. He needed to bolster her responsibility. So, in a moment fueled by desperation, he sold her apartment. The papers were signed, the keys turned over, and Sarah's sanctuary became a memory before she could even grasp the reality of it all. The next afternoon, Sarah returned home, her laughter fading as she turned the key in the lock. The echo of emptiness hung heavily in the air, the walls witness to their shared warmth, now starkly barren. Her eyes swelled with disbelief when she saw her father standing in the middle of the room, boxes piled high beside him. "Dad, what happened?" she stammered, dread creeping into her voice. "I thought, it's time for you to face reality, Sarah. You need to grow up," he shouted, his own heartbreak masquerading his anger. "How could you do this?" Tears streamed down her face as she unleashed her pain, her voice crescendoing with every word. "You don't understand anything about me. You think you can just erase my life?" The rooms echoed with sorrow as echoes of joy turned into bitter memories. They were ensnared in a cruel loop of hurt, each exchanging words that cut deeper than any battle wound. Tom looked beyond the surface anger, seeing the fragility of his daughter's spirit, mirroring his own loneliness. And then, as Sarah rifled through the remnants of her life, a piece of paper slipped from the folds of an old box, a letter from her father when she was just a child. She caught it mid-fall and opened it, her breath hitching in her throat with each line she read. The ink spoke of unwavering love, support, and promises he had vowed to keep. A silence settled over them, the weight of love now palpable in the air. This moment, fraught with tension, yet ripe with possibility, became a fragile bridge to understanding.
Could they rebuild? Could they redefine love amidst these generational chasms? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can, drop a like. It really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With emotions raw and undiluted, they stood on the precipice of revelation. What would come next? Would love defeat the shadows of miscommunication? Would a father and daughter find their way back to the warmth they once shared? Or was this the end? Sarah felt the letter tremble in her hands. Each word glowed with clarity, reminding her of the warmth her father had once radiated. She looked up from the letter, her eyes searching Tom's face, hoping to find a trace of the man who had written those heartfelt lines long ago. "Do you remember this, Dad?" Her voice broke the silence, its softness contradicting the earlier rage. Tom took a step closer, his world spinning as he hesitated, struggling to respond. Memories of bedtime stories, gentle hugs, and scraped knees flashed like photographs in his mind. He began, glancing at the letter. "I do. I remember promising you I would always be there." "But then you sold my apartment," she whispered, hurt mixed with confusion swirling in her voice. "I feel like you're not there anymore.
It's like you don't know me at all. Sarah, I thought. Tom's voice caught in his throat, the intensity of his actions crashing around him. He kicked at the ground, trying to ground himself with something more sturdy than emotions. I thought I was doing this to help you, to teach you. To teach me what? To push me away? She interjected sharply. The shadows of their anger were still evident between them, and yet the faintest shimmer of understanding glimmered in her eyes. Tom's heart sank. Wasn't that the very thing he was trying to avoid? Pushing her away had never been his intention. He struggled to convey that, but he could see it clearly. His actions had only widened the chasm between them. I wanted to protect you, he finally managed, voice quaking. I thought maybe if you saw things for what they were, you'd become stronger. You don't get it, Dad. You think I need to be tough. Her hands trembled, the letter still held firmly between her fingers. Sometimes I just want to be your daughter, to feel loved, not like a project or your personal mission to fix. The vulnerability in her voice pierced through Tom's defenses. The urgency in her tone pulled at his heartstrings. He took a step back, analyzing whether he could grasp the chaos he had created.
I thought you hated me, that you wanted me to stop being me, he said, half desperate, half hopeful. He could see the corners of her mouth quivering, the walls she had built around her heart slowly crumbling. Maybe I did, but not in the way you think, she admitted, eyes glistening with unshed tears. I hate how you made me feel like I was just a burden, a reason for you to act out. I don't want to live with that weight anymore. Tom felt raw, exposed. Every shroud of defense he had woven around himself had begun to fray. For the first time, he caught a glimpse of the young woman before him, not just as his daughter, but as someone filled with doubts and desires of her own. What do you want? He asked finally, a plea for connection that hung in the air. Tell me. I just want us to talk, to listen, she said, her voice a whisper now. I need you to see me for who I really am, not just who you think I should be. As Sarah spoke, the room transformed around them, the echoes of their hurt giving way to fragile hope. The atmosphere felt charged with possibilities. Could this be the beginning of something new? Tom nodded slowly, his heart opening gradually. Okay, let's start over. Just then, a loud crash from outside interrupted them, like thunder striking a chord that vibrated through their souls. What was that? Sarah asked, alarm flickering in her eyes. Tom turned towards the window, a sense of unease creeping in. I don't know, he murmured, feeling the weight of their fragile moment teetering on the edge of an unknown storm. What had they just opened? Answers were waiting, but outside, chaos stirred. Would it bring them together, or pull them apart again? The crash echoed again, deeper this time, vibrating through the walls like the aftermath of a small explosion. Sarah stared wide-eyed at Tom, her breath hitching as fear tightened around her. They froze for a moment, and the air was thick with unspoken words and unshed tears. Should we check? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom's instinct was protective. Stay here, he urged, stepping toward the door. But the thought of leaving her alone, even for a moment, felt unbearable. No, I'm coming with you, she insisted, a note of strength piercing through her fear. The pair stepped outside, the cool evening air wrapping around them like a damp blanket. The street was dark, shadows creeping ominously as they moved cautiously down the stairs. A noise erupted again. This time it was accompanied by the screech of metal on concrete. They rounded the corner and gasped. A car, their neighbor's old sedan, was flipped on its side, headlights flickering like frightened eyes. Glass scattered across the pavement glimmered under the street lamp. What happened? Sarah exclaimed, her pulse racing as panic filled her chest. Tom scanned the scene. A small group of people had gathered, voices murmuring in shock, but one figure stood out among them. It was Mr. Jenkins, the retired firefighter who lived down the street. We heard a loud crash, he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. Looks like the driver lost control. Luckily, no one's hurt, well, except for the car. Where's the driver? Tom asked, anxiety thickening his throat. Still inside, but I think they're conscious. Mr. Jenkins gestured toward the car. They were speeding. It's a miracle they didn't hit anyone. In that moment, Tom felt Sarah squeeze his hand tightly. She was scared, yet he sensed a flicker of determination in her grip. It was remarkable how the urgency of the situation blurred the tension from their earlier fight. Should we help? She asked, eyes starting from the crowd to her father. For a moment, Tom hesitated. He was no hero, just an ordinary dad trying to make sense of his daughter's pain and his own failures. But something shifted inside him, igniting a spark of bravery. Yes, we should. As they ventured closer, the adrenaline surged through them. The flashes of the emergency lights painted everything in an eerie hue, but it felt invigorating, being united in a moment of action. When they reached the vehicle, they could see the driver slumped against the steering wheel, blood trickling from a gash on their forehead. Black smoke curled upwards, thick and acrid, and the urgency of the situation became palpable. "Stay back. We need to let the professionals handle this," someone called out. "No," Sarah cried, her voice rising above the noise. "What if they need help before the ambulance arrives?" Tom's heart raced. He realized that in this moment, they were both grappling with their fears. Fear of failure, fear of vulnerability, and fear of the unknown. "Okay," he said, feeling a strange mixture of fear and pride. "We'll be their backup." As they watched, others began to call for help, but Sarah's voice cut through the air, filled with strength. "Help is on the way. Can you hear me? Just hold on." For the first time, their earlier conflicts dimmed as adrenaline took over. In this chaotic moment, as they felt their hearts pound together, they became aware that something was shifting between them. The sirens wailed in the distance, urging them forward, and they stood together, Sarah and Tom, a father and daughter united in action. Could this chaotic event be the very thing to build a bridge across the chasm they'd faced? But as the ambulance arrived and lights flashed around them, a wave of another loud crash interrupted. This time, a thunderous crack came from above, making Sarah and Tom look up in horror. What was that? Sarah's voice was tinged with panic again. A storm was brewing, but this time, it wasn't just outside, it was inside them too. What would they face next? Would those moments of fear blossom into something greater? The crack echoed like a gunshot in their ears. Tom's heart raced. Fear clawed at his chest as he instinctively pulled Sarah closer. What was that?
"She," repeated, panic spilling into her voice. Her eyes were wide, searching the skies as if the answer lay among the stars, hidden behind factory smoke and overcast skies. "Stay close," Tom whispered, his voice steadying himself as much as her. He scanned the surroundings, the air shifting with the wind's chill, carrying scents of smoke and metal. From behind them, a voice shouted, filled with urgency, "Get away from the vehicle!" A figure, clad in a bright yellow jacket, was sprinting toward them, waving his arms fervently. "Is there another car?" Tom asked instinctively. The thought of another accident sent a shiver down his spine. Mr. Jenkins stepped forward, worry etched across his face. "I think it came from above, from the old parking garage." He pointed toward a dilapidated structure at the end of the block, shadows cloaking it like a cloak of secrets. "Come on, we need to move," Tom urged, severity in his tone, gripping Sarah's hand tight. Together they ran away from the wreckage, away from the overturned car and the rattled crowd hovering at a distance. As danger loomed, they reached the entrance of the old garage, the remnants of a once bustling hub, now quietly rot with neglect. Peering inside, the darkness felt like a gaping mouth, threatening to swallow them whole. Tom hesitated. "Maybe we should just—" "No," Sarah interjected, determination boiling in her eyes. "What if someone's trapped in there? We can't just leave them." His heart swelled. In that moment, he understood how far they had come. This wasn't just about a car accident anymore. It was about helping others, stepping out of their comfort zones, together. "Okay, let's stick together," Tom agreed, knowing there was no turning back now. They stepped inside, the scent of mildew and dust hitting them like a wall. The light from the street filtered through the grimy windows, casting eerie shadows. As they advanced deeper into the building, they stumbled over forgotten debris, remnants of lives halted in motion. Suddenly, another loud crash reverberated, and dust rained down from the ceiling like confetti from a sad party. "Did you hear that?" Sarah breathed, fear now a tangible entity wrapping around them. Tom nodded, that sense of protectiveness roaring back again. "Yeah, let's keep moving." Together they navigated further into the darkness, hearts pounding wildly, each echoing footstep amplifying the growing dread. Then they heard it, a faint cry, muffled and pitiful. "Help, please, someone help." Sarah's eyes widened, her voice breaking with urgency. "We have to find them." She started running toward the sound, and Tom followed, his own fear pushed aside by an instinct to protect her. The cry led them to a crumpled figure beneath a pile of debris, a young woman whose face was pale and streaked with tears. "Stay back," Tom shouted to the crowd that had gathered at the entrance. "We need to get her out." "Is it safe?" Sarah questioned, glancing back in fear.
"Just help me here," he instructed, taking charge. Together, they carefully lifted debris away, revealing the woman's terrified face. With each piece they removed, it felt like they were not just freeing her from the wreckage. They were breaking the chains that had held Tom and Sarah back from truly connecting. But just as they reached out to pull her free, the ceiling creaked ominously above them. "Tom!" Sarah gasped, eyes darting back in horror. "Hold on!" he shouted, panic seeping into his voice. As the trembling dust settled, a new realization hit him. Would rescuing her lead to more than just saving a life? Would it shift the balance of their own fractured relationship forever? What awaited them beyond this moment felt daunting, but there was no turning back. Would this act of courage bind them together or tear them apart? Tom's heart raced as the creaking overhead seemed to echo the tumult within him. In that moment, time stretched, every second weighing heavy with unspoken fears. The young woman beneath the debris, with her wide, frightened eyes, highlighted their urgency, sharpening their focus. "Just a bit more," Tom grunted, shifting another heavy piece of rubble. The young woman whimpered, her lips quivering. Tom met her gaze. "You're gonna be okay. We've got you." "Please hurry," her voice cracked, desperation spilling over. "Hold on," Sarah encouraged, her voice soothing yet shaky. She carefully lifted a jagged slab. "You're gonna be free soon." Another low groan echoed from above, sending chills down Tom's spine. "We have to be quick," he whispered through clenched teeth, feeling the weight of their task and the looming danger. The adrenaline spurred him on, but doubt shadowed every move. He could feel Sarah's fear like a weight on his chest, yet her determination ignited something within him. It was in her spirit that he found his own courage. They were in this together, and for the first time in a long while, he felt hope intertwined with terror. "Almost there." Tom heaved the last slab off her legs, revealing the bruises and cuts that littered her skin. "Can you stand?" The woman nodded, fumbling as she pushed herself to sit up. Sarah extended her hand, and with a grip tighter than the ground beneath them, the woman took it. As Tom and Sarah pulled her free, a sudden crash above sent debris hurling down. "Get down!" he shouted, throwing his body over Sarah's and the woman, shielding them. Dust enveloped them, the stench thick with decay and fear. When it settled, Tom raised his head slowly. They were still intact, but the air felt electric, charged with a lingering threat. "We need to get out of here, now." "Can you walk?" Sarah asked, looking at the woman with concern. I think so," she stammered, her face streaked with grime. "Then let's go," Tom urged, wrapping an arm around the woman's waist, supporting her weight. "Follow us." Together, they cautiously retraced their steps, weaving through the collapsing structure, every creak of wood and groan of metal echoing ominous warnings. With each step, Tom felt as if they were racing against something unseen, something that could snatch away any chance of escape. The entrance loomed ahead, its frame flickering with faint light, but also shadows of instability. Tom's heart pounded in rhythm with their quickened pace. He could feel Sarah's breath quickening, her urgency energizing him as the adrenaline pulsed through his veins. Just as they burst into the blinding daylight, a thunderous boom resounded behind them. They stumbled forward, tumbling onto the pavement, hearts racing, lungs burning with the fresh air. "Is everyone okay?" Tom gasped, shaking dust from his hair. He looked at the woman, whose expression mirrored their own shock. I don't know what to say," her voice quivered, riddled with disbelief. "Just breathe," Sarah urged, brushing soot from her face. "You're safe now." But for Tom, safety felt like an elusive concept. They had survived, but the reality of what just happened weighed heavily. Would they be different now? Would cutting through the darkness of that garage somehow change how they saw each other, how they felt? "Thank you," the woman cried, tears mingling with the dirt on her cheeks. Before Tom could respond, Mr. Jenkins stepped closer, his face tightened with concern. "You need to tell someone about this. We have to call for an ambulance." But as Tom looked at Sarah, a question lingered in the air. Deep down, he sensed that this moment was only part of their journey. Would their bond be transformed because of this? He feared what awaited them, but felt strangely renewed, as if hope had taken root. "Thank you," the woman cried, tears mingling with the dirt on her cheeks. Before Tom could respond, Mr. Jenkins stepped closer, his face tightened with concern. "You need to tell someone about this. We have to call for an ambulance." But as Tom looked at Sarah, a question lingered in the air. Deep down, he sensed that this moment was only part of their journey. Would their bond be transformed because of this? He feared what awaited them, but felt strangely renewed, as if hope had taken root. Then, from the shadows of the garage, a low moan echoed, a reminder that their ordeal was far from over. What would they find when they looked back? Could they face it together, or would this experience fracture the bond they just formed? Tom's heart still raced, but it was no longer solely from adrenaline. As he carefully gathered his breath, he felt an uncomfortable heaviness settling in.
The weight of survival was smothering, gnawing at the edges of his mind as he looked at Sarah and the woman they had just saved. "Are you sure you're okay?" Sarah asked, eyes full of concern. She reached out, lightly touching the woman's shoulder, grounding her in that moment. The woman nodded, but her face bore a mask of disbelief. I don't even know how to say thank you," she stammered, wiping grime from her face only to smear it further. I thought I was going to die." "You weren't alone," Tom affirmed, his voice steadier than he felt. "You're safe now. We all are." But even as he said it, his instincts told him that their safety was temporary. Around them, Mr. Jenkins was waving his phone, trying to get a signal. A small crowd had gathered, whispering among themselves.
The murmurs floated through the air, a mix of relief and disbelief as people processed what had just happened in the alley. Suddenly, the loud sirens of an approaching ambulance pierced the air, drawing everyone's attention. The sound was jarring and oddly comforting. Help was coming, but that only heightened the tension for Tom. He wasn't ready to let go of this moment, this bond. "Let's sit down over there," Sarah suggested, gesturing toward a bench a bit farther from the crowd. Tom nodded, leading the way, their new ally limping beside him. The closer they got to the bench, the more Tom felt an urge to protect her, almost as if her scars were etched on his own skin. Once they sat down, the contrast of the vibrant daylight and the chaos of moments before felt surreal. The woman took deep breaths, letting the air fill her lungs for what seemed like the first time in forever. "Do you have family?" Tom asked gently. He noticed her eyes filling with tears again, an indication that the shock was only just beginning to crack the surface. I was supposed to meet my dad," she whispered, wiping at her cheeks. "He's going to be so worried." "What was your name?" Sarah asked, her voice soft but encouraging. "Emily," she replied, glancing between them. "And you two are?" "I'm Sarah, and this is Tom. We saw you in there, and we couldn't just leave you," Sarah said, a hint of pride in her voice. "Thank you," Emily said, her gaze dropping. "I didn't think anyone would find me. I thought I was all alone." Tom exchanged a glance with Sarah. In that moment, he realized how connected they all were, strangers thrown together in chaos, now bound by shared experience. Before they could dwell on what had just occurred, a series of heavy footsteps approached, punctuated by the low hum of people murmuring. A paramedic rushed up, his face stern but determined as he assessed the scene. "Can you tell me what happened?" he asked Emily gently but firmly. As she began to recount her ordeal, Tom felt a strange mix of pride and vulnerability bubbling within him. He was part of something bigger now, a lifeline for someone who needed help. But behind them, the shadows of the garage beckoned. There, the low moan returned, a deep echo that sent shivers down his spine. "Tom?" Sarah's voice broke through his thoughts. "What do we do if there are still people trapped inside?" The weight of her question hung between them, the dawning reality that their fight hadn't ended. Would they be brave enough to go back? Could they hold on to this bond, or would fear redefine what had just formed? As the sirens faded into the background, Tom took a deep breath, determination surging through him. "We can't leave anyone behind," he said, looking at Sarah and then Emily. In that moment, he knew they were all in this together. But as they stood, the garage loomed ominously behind them, its threats still lingering. What awaited them inside? Would they be capable of facing the unknown, or would they walk away from the shadows that call them back? As Tom took a step toward the garage, the shadows felt thicker, almost alive. He could feel Sarah's hand tighten around his forearm, a silent plea for him to reconsider. Emily's wide eyes flickered between them, uncertainty knitting her brow. "Are you sure?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. There was fear there, real and palpable, and Tom shared it. The weight of the unknown loomed larger than any physical threat. "We can't just walk away," Tom replied, his heart pounding. The echoes of those moans were not just sounds, they were cries for help, and he couldn't ignore them. He could shield himself from so much, but not from this. "What if someone else needs us?" Emily nodded, her resolve reigniting. "I can't just leave them," she said softly, her voice gaining strength. "I was lucky you found me." Tom looked at Sarah. He could see the conflict in her eyes. They had just escaped chaos, and now they were standing on the brink of diving back into it. Her bravery had shone through already today, but this was different. This was a choice that could change everything. "Okay," Sarah finally said, determination knitting her features. "Let's do it,
But we have to be careful. Despite the tremor in her voice, there was an undeniable spark of courage. Together they approached the garage, the shifting light betraying the depths of shadows that danced just beyond their view. The sounds from inside resonated louder, more urgent. Every step felt like crossing into another world. Inside, the air was thick, a faint smell of burnt rubber mixed with something far worse. Tom inhaled deeply, grounding himself in the moment. Adrenaline surged through him as he pushed past the fear swirling in his gut. He needed to find those in danger, to do something that mattered. "Hello?" Tom called out, his voice echoing against the cold concrete. The silence that followed was deafening. The only reply was the faint sound of rustling, punctuated by another pitiful moan. "Over here!" Emily shouted suddenly, pointing towards a darkened corner. The shadows shifted unnaturally, and Tom's pulse quickened. They rushed forward, their hearts beating in sync. As they approached, Tom could see a faint outline of a person crumpled on the ground, hidden in the depths of the garage's shadows. Fear and urgency clashed in his chest as he knelt beside the figure. It was a young boy, no older than 10, his breathing labored. "It's okay," he whispered, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. He could feel the heat of the boy's skin, a fever radiating through him. As Emily knelt beside them, she looked up, her eyes filled with panic. "We need to get him out, now!" Tom nodded. In the periphery, he sensed movement, more shadows shifting, more forms trapped within the jagged terrain of the garage. It was worse than he feared.
"Quick, we have to keep looking," Sarah urged, urgency coursing through her voice as she moved deeper into the garage. As they split up, the reality of their situation set in. This was no longer a rescue for a single person, but a desperate mission to save anyone still trapped in this ominous place. The weight of responsibility hung heavy on Tom's shoulders. Minutes felt like hours, each second ticking past, fraught with tension. He could hear more cries, muffled and desperate. The thought of everyone paying the price for their previous silence flooded his mind. Just as he was about to call Sarah and Emily back to regroup, a loud crash echoed behind him, followed by a deafening silence. "Tom! Sarah!" Fear clawed at him as he whipped around, heart racing. What was that? And then there came the unmistakable sound of shifting concrete. The garage was unstable. They had to get out now. "Over here!" Emily cried, but Tom's thoughts raced. Where was Sarah? Panicking, he took a step back, straining to see through the dark. Would they make it out in time? Would they be one of the lucky ones? Or was this their final chapter? "Sarah!" he shouted, voice breaking. There was no answer, only the distant sound of crumbling walls. The stakes had never been higher, and desperation poured through his veins. "We can't leave anyone behind," he remembered saying. But could they save themselves as well? Approaching the unsettling silence, Tom realized their bond was only beginning to face its ultimate test. Would they honor their promise in the darkness, or would tragedy rewrite their new connection? Tom's heart raced as he spun around, trying to get a glimpse of Sarah. The shifting shadows felt alive, pressing against him, almost suffocating. "Sarah!" he shouted again, his voice wavering with fear. No response. An overwhelming sensation of dread washed over him. He couldn't lose them. He couldn't let their bravery slip away into that darkness. Swallowing hard, he focused on the boy beside him. "Can you stand?" he asked, gently gripping the boy's arm. The feverish heat flared beneath his touch. The boy nodded weakly. "Follow me," he encouraged, pulling the boy up to his feet. The child swayed, then steadied himself. Tom exchanged a quick glance with Emily. Her face was etched with worry, yet determination. "Let's find Sarah. She needs our help." Together they moved deeper into the garage, a maze of shadows and half-familiar shapes that loomed ominously in the corner of Tom's eye. Each step felt heavy, a reminder of the urgency that ticked like a clock in his chest. Suddenly, they heard a soft whimpering, almost blending with the silence around them. "Over here!" Emily cried, pointing toward a pile of debris. Part of him wanted to scream with frustration at the obstacles they faced, but he knew they had to push through. As they approached, Tom identified a figure partially buried beneath some heavy sheets of metal. It was a young woman, covered in dust, her face pale. "Help me!" she gasped, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Stay calm. Tom said, forcing a calmness into his voice as he and Emily began moving the debris aside. "We'll get you out. Just hold on." With every sound of grinding metal, the garage creaked ominously, and the walls felt as though they were slowly closing in on them. The air grew thicker, stale and biting. "We have to hurry," Emily urged, glancing back at the shadows threatening to engulf them. Just a few more pushes, and the woman was free. Tom helped her to her feet, feeling the slight weight of her frail form as she leaned against him for support. "Thank you," she murmured, but her eyes were distant, lost in confusion and fear. "Where's Sarah?" Tom demanded, scanning the dimly lit space. "We need to find her." The woman looked around, her gaze darting like a frightened bird. I don't know," she stammered, shaking her head. "I was just—" A tremor ran through the concrete underfoot, sending a wave of panic crashing through Tom. "We can't wait any longer," he yelled, adrenaline coursing through his veins. They had to get everyone out. Suddenly, from the depths of the shadows, a familiar voice rang out. "Tom!" It was Sarah, but her tone was edged with urgency. He turned, relief flooding through him at the sound. She emerged, breathless and frantic, a haunting silhouette in the gloom. "We have to go." "What about the others?" Tom pleaded. "There are more trapped, but the roof is caving in. It's too dangerous." "Sarah, we can't just leave them." The emotions swirled inside him. Fear, anger, helplessness. "Tom," she yelled back, an edge of desperation breaking through. "Please, we can't save everyone. We have to save ourselves." A heavy silence fell as they all absorbed those words, and it hit Tom hard. A choice loomed before them. In that moment, he realized their connection was fragile, hanging on the razor's edge of survival. Who would they become in the aftermath of this chaos? Tom looked at the frightened boy, the injured woman, at Emily, whose eyes shimmered with unshed tears. He felt torn apart, wanting to cling to hope, yet haunted by the reality of their situation. "Okay," he said finally, clenching his fists. "Let's go." As they turned to follow Sarah back toward the exit, another loud crash echoed through the garage. A fresh wave of dust cascaded down from the ceiling, and Tom felt his stomach drop. "Run!" he shouted, but as they sprinted toward the light, he lost sight of the shadows behind them. Would they escape the darkness, or would it consume them whole? Each heartbeat felt like a countdown to disaster, and Tom couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something far worse. What choices lay ahead? Would they remain united, or were they doomed to fracture under pressure when it mattered most? The dust swirled like a storm as they bolted for the exit. Tom's heart thundered in his chest. He could see the faint glow of light beckoning them forward, but his eyes flicked back toward the shadows, haunting memories waiting to pull them back. "Faster!" Sarah urged, her voice cutting through the din of collapsing metal. Emily gripped the boy's hand, her pale knuckles a sign of her resolve. The floor trembled beneath them, threatening to give way as they reached the dim pool of light. Just as they stepped out, another thunderous crash reverberated behind them, showering debris like rain. Tom dared not look back, but he couldn't help the dread that curled in his stomach. Were they leaving people behind? "Is everyone okay?" he asked, glancing at each face. Emily nodded, her brow furrowed with worry. The woman was breathless, and the boy looked pale, but they were alive. "Where do we go now?" the boy asked, his small voice shaky. "Anywhere but here," Sarah said, scanning their surroundings. They emerged into the fading light of dusk, the garage standing like a beast behind them, as if ready to swallow them whole. Tom's eyes landed on a nearby house, its porch light casting a warm glow. "We should head there. They might have a phone, and we can call for help," he suggested. As they began to move, his mind was storming. What if more were trapped? What if that woman had been lying? Could they really take the risk of going back inside? Guilt began to gnaw at him, a constant echo of what had just transpired. Once at the house, Sarah knocked frantically. Silence followed. "Come on," she urged, her frustration shining through cracks of her earlier panic. Tom felt the weight of the decision they had made crashing down. "What if they're still in there?" he uttered, more to himself than anyone else. But before anyone could respond, the door creaked open. An older man peered out, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. "What happened?" he asked, scanning the group. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Tom took a deep breath, swallowing back the impending tide of emotions. "We need help. There's been an accident. People are trapped inside the garage." The man hesitated, glancing at the shadows still looming where they had just escaped.
I'll call 911, he said, stepping aside. Get inside. Relief washed over them as they piled into the dim living room. There was safety here, but the darkness still loomed outside. Tom kept glancing toward the door, the pull of the garage still gripping him. Tom, Emily's voice broke through his thoughts. Are you okay? He tried to smile, but felt hollow inside. Yeah, just worried. About what? She asked, her eyes searching his. I can't shake the feeling we didn't do enough. What if someone else is still in there? Tom, Sarah interjected, her tone a mix of concern and strength. We did what we could. We saved who we could. You can't carry this weight on your shoulders. Just then, a loud knock echoed through the house.
The group jumped, hearts racing once more. Tom felt a rush of adrenaline. Could it be more survivors? Stay here, he said, moving toward the door. The others watched him, their expressions a mixture of hope and fear. He opened the door, heart pounding, the shadow of the garage still haunting him. The world outside offered a harsh contrast, a realization that he couldn't ignore. There were choices still waiting to be made, but at what cost? And right then and there, as darkness threatened to envelop everything, he understood that the battle wasn't just against the chaos. It was also against the echoes of choices that would linger long after this night passed. What awaited him on the other side of that door? Would their choices define who they were, or could they still choose differently? As Tom stood at the threshold, a flurry of emotions played across his face, fear, hope, and a dawning sense of responsibility. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever came next. He couldn't shake the feeling that something more awaited him beyond this moment, something that could shape the very core of who they were becoming. When he opened the door wider, it revealed a silhouette against the twilight. The moon hung low, softening the harsh edges of reality. Please, we need help, a panicked voice broke through the silence. It was a paramedic, out of breath but determined. Behind him, a troop of emergency responders surged forward, their faces a mix of resolve and urgency. Is everyone okay? The paramedic asked quickly, assessing the group. Tom felt the weight of his chest lighten as he realized they weren't alone anymore. They had acted bravely in the face of chaos, and now help was here. Can you take us back? Tom asked, his voice steadying despite the tremor of fear that thudded in his heart. He felt Sarah's presence beside him. Her hand tightened around his arm. Her silent affirmation gave him strength. Only if it's safe, the paramedic replied, urgency in his voice. Is anyone still inside? Tom exchanged glances with Sarah and Emily, contemplating the choices they had made. The little boy stood close, eyes wide with fear and wonder. There are still people trapped, Tom said resolutely. We can't leave them behind. The paramedic nodded, rallying his colleagues. All right, we'll need to go in pairs. We can do this safely. Tom's heart swelled anew with purpose as they turned back toward the garage, but the familiar shadows began to creep back into view, each step folding heaviness into his chest. The urgency of the moment broke through the uncertainty. This was the chance they had needed, the opportunity to face their fears and rewrite the fabric of their connection. As they reached the eerie entrance, Sarah turned to Tom, tears shimmering in her eyes, but determination holding her steadfast. Whatever happens next, I'm with you. Together, he replied softly, the words spilling from his lips like a vow wrapped in hope. They stepped inside again, lights flickering to life as the rescuers led the way, illuminating the shadows that had once terrified them. The atmosphere was heavy with the smell of mildew and despair, but courage burned brighter. Over there, Emily pointed again, guiding them toward where cries echoed in the darkness. They split into teams, and Tom kept pace with Sarah, now more aware of the bond they were rebuilding. Each person they found seemed to rejuvenate their spirits. The more lives they saved, the more healing happened within themselves. Is there anyone else? One of the paramedics asked, as they cleared away more debris, an unfamiliar air of relief beginning to settle among them. Just one more, Tom shouted, urging the team onward. In the back corner. As they approached, another figure lay crumpled on the ground, and their hearts raced. Could they really save everyone? They pulled the woman from underneath the wreckage, exchanging hurried words of encouragement, their actions fueled by the commitment they had forged to one another in facing their shared fears. After what felt like hours, but was really only minutes, they emerged back into the light,
breathing in the fresh air, feeling the warmth of life surrounding them again. Tom looked around. Each face had transformed. They were alive, stronger than before, and ready for change. "That was amazing," Sarah said, giving a breathy laugh as she hugged Tom tightly. I think we really did something here." Tom nodded. "We fought for every single life." He looked toward Emily, who was still catching her breath, and the boy who now stood tall and defiant. "You were so brave." Just then, the paramedics received another call. One more group of people would need their help. Tom could feel the weight of the night pressing down on him, but it was no longer suffocating. This time, they faced the unknown together, as a family united by their shared bravery. He turned to Sarah, and there it was, the radiant smile that had first drawn him to strive for a connection. This night had transformed not only the people they saved, but also the bonds they cherished. In that moment, Tom understood fully. Love wasn't about control, nor was it always defined by how they had once seen each other. It was about understanding. It was compassion. It was standing beside one another through chaos and finding the beauty that emerged from a fractured past. As they walked down the street toward the safety of the emergency vehicles, Tom knew this was just the beginning for them all. Would they carry forward that strength with each other, or would they allow it to drift away like so many autumn leaves? As they left the shadows behind, something profound had shifted. Their hearts were lighter, filled with promise. And as the sirens faded into the night, Tom took a moment to ground himself. He glanced around at the faces who had been with him in chaos and unity.
"Let's not wait another moment to share our truth," he suggested to them, holding his breath in anticipation of their shared commitment. "Let's keep talking," Sarah replied, her resolve echoing through the air. "Together," Tom added, feeling a smile bloom on his face. This was the moment for connection, healing, and unparalleled love. As they stepped forward, lives having changed, he felt invincible. They had faced the storm and weathered it hand in hand. Now, it was time to step into the dawn of a new chapter. And you, my friends, don't you dare miss the next adventure. Subscribe immediately to our channel. You need to be part of this journey. Leave a like now so we can keep sharing these incredible stories that touch our hearts. And don't forget to comment below. Share your thoughts and feelings about this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible journey of connection and healing. Don't wait, not even one more second. We can build this community together, one heart at a time. You matter. Your support matters. Let's make this happen.